instalment of the Artriums watercolour project for the month of November with me, Claire. Now, last time we looked at an introduction to watercolours and how to correctly use the materials that we had. We had a quick look at the types of paper we should use when painting with watercolours, which is watercolour paper. We looked at a few little different techniques, and this week we're going to be doing a bit of colour theory and how we mix the colours together to create a desired colour that we want to use in our artwork. We're also going to build on this by mixing tints and shades which make the colour lighter and darker. So all you're going to need for this particular session is a couple of paintbrushes, watercolour paper and your paint palette. You should also have one of these books from previous projects. You can always use these to practice in if you want to practice mixing other colours. I know the paper's not as good as watercolour paper, but it's okay to practice with. So what we'll be starting off with is a colour wheel that consists of 3 primary colours and 3 secondary colours. We're also going to mix these colours together to create tertiary colours. After that we'll be moving on to creating tints and shades. So I'm going to jump off camera now so that you can see a bit more clearly what I'm doing, and we'll just talk through the whole process. So what we're going to start off with are our 3 primary colours, which are red, blue and yellow. And on the camera it doesn't seem to be picking up that the red is very red. I might want to wet it and put it on the page a bit. It looks more sort of pinky, and the orange looks quite pink as well. Must just be the lighting, but I guess you'll have to take my word for it. And it'll look better in real life when you're making your own colour wheel. So I'm going to start off with the red. I've put a little bit of water into this, but I want it to be quite pigmented just for the sake of showing you the colours. And I'm just going to start with a little bit of a mark up here, around about that much. And I'm going to do this also for the blue and the yellow, but in sort of a triangular form. Let me brush it good, clean in the water. So you will need a glass of water or sort of a cup of water to wash your brushes out as well, I must add. So I'm going to do the same for the blue. I'll bring that to the camera so you can see. I'm going for the darker blue just because I think it'll come up on the camera a lot easier. The lighter blue kind of looks a little bit green. This one here, it's actually light blue. But I'm not very technical, so I don't know how I would sort of fix that. Right, so I've got that blue there. I'm going to make a mark about here. It's a bit better. And then I'm going to do the same with the yellow. Do you know what, because the yellow is so light, I'm going to get a totally clean brush for this, because I don't want to risk mixing any colours into the yellow when we want a standalone yellow colour on the page. I want to get this as pigmented as possible so that you can see it on the camera. I will hold this up as well, closer to the camera once it's done, so you can have a proper look. It is much brighter in real life, and you'll find that if you sort of carry out this exercise as well, that it will be much brighter when you do it for yourself. I really do apologise for the camera focusing in and out, but I really don't know how to fix it. Alright, so these are our 3 primary colours, and I'm going to hold those up to show you a bit better. So we have our red. I'm aware it looks a bit pink, but it's just how the lighting is and how the camera is. I promise it's red in real life. And then we have the yellow. And we have the blue. So what we're going to do is we're going to use these colours that are in a triangular form to add them all together. So we're going to add the yellow and the red to make our secondary colour orange. We're going to mix the red and the blue to make our secondary colour purple, and then we're going to mix the blue and the yellow to make our secondary colour green. So the way I'm going to do that is just move that to the side a little bit. I'm going to mix my colours in the tray, in the lid. So I think I'll start off with the yellow and the red. I'm going to build up a lot of red in there, a lot of pigment. And what I'm going to do is get that clean brush again that's only been in the yellow, and I'm going to give it its own little section here rather than mixing it in with the red. Now that's important because if I start mixing this straight in with the red, it'll just make like a really dark orange kind of, it won't be like a bright orange that you're used to seeing, like a pumpkin colour orange. It would just be like a little bit of a yellowy tinge in the red. So this way we can sort of control how orange it's going to go. So I think I've got enough yellow there. I'm going to take the paintbrush that I had my red on, and I'm going to give it a bit of a dry. I'm just going to pick up a little bit there and start mixing it in with the yellow. Now I am aware that we do have an orange already in the palette, but it's always good to have these skills to knowing what colours make what, because you might not want that sort of intensity of orange. You might want it to be a bit lighter or darker, or a bit more red, a bit more yellow. So if you have full control over that in the beginning, then you'll never sort of get stuck. So I'm going to add a little bit more red, I think. And I think that's a nice orange. And I think it's different to this orange that we have. And again, I know that it looks pink. I will put it a bit closer. There, you can see it's more orange now. I think it's the red, like reflecting somehow with the light onto it, because that is so vibrant. And then let the camera focus again. That's the colour that we've came up with. So I'm going to add that onto our colour wheel. Using this paintbrush that we've been mixing it with. Around about that much. Pop that on one side again. I'm going to take a little bit of tissue and clean out this orange that we've just made. Now if you were using it for a particular painting, I would recommend making quite a lot of your colour that you've created, just because it's very hard to get the exact colour back if you're not sort of religiously measuring how much paint you're mixing. Oh, that looks quite bright now, doesn't it? There we go. Right, now because I've still got the red, I'm going to mix the red and blue to make our secondary colour of purple. Now what I'm going to do is add some more red into what we already had. Now because the blue is quite a lot darker than the red, I'm going to add the blue straight to the red. So I would always recommend adding the darker colours to the lighter colours, but only in small doses, because if you add too much then it'll be way too dark than what you were expecting. So I've got just a little bit of blue on the end of my paintbrush there, and I'm just going to start slowly mixing it in with the red to it'll create quite a dark purple to begin with, but that's sort of when you start. If you wanted it lighter, that's when the tints and shades come in. Well, mostly the tints would come in. So there we are. It doesn't look very purple on camera, but it is. I think what we can do is add a little bit more red. Or you could just add a bit more water as well with watercolours to make them a bit lighter. Now that's gone more of like a cherry purple. So it is just kind of an experiment really to see sort of what colours make what. Right, I think I'm happy with that shade there. I'll bring my colour wheel back. I'm going to add it here between the red and the blue. Just a similar sized sample. And again, I'm going to grab a bit more tissue from a little collection. It's a good thing about watercolours as well, they're really not that messy. You can easily just wipe them away, and they're all water based, so add a bit of water and a tissue and you're good to go. And clean this brush off. And now our last one is adding the yellow and the blue to make green. And again, I know you've got a couple of shades of green in this palette, but you never know what shade you're really going to need. Not every blade of grass is either this colour or this colour, you know, you need plenty of different shades and you need to know how to mix them. Sort of the foundational skills before we delve into something a bit more technical. So what I'm going to do again, let's just move that to the side. Do you know what, I'm going to get rid of this book from underneath because I think it's making it a little bit difficult to see. So I'm going to add tray again. Put the one that's been in the yellow so we don't contaminate the colour in the pan. Mix up a nice pigmented version, go with like quite a thick paste, just for the time being. And you can add more water to create more of a stock of your paint. You don't need an awful lot when you're just practicing, but I would make it depends on the size of your painting really. But I'm sure you can judge that when it comes to it. Alright, now I'm going to go in with the blue. I'm just going to pick up a tiny bit of this blue because if you put the tiniest bit too much, you'll end up not with the colour that you want. So I'm just very carefully continuing to add that blue, and it is making quite a dark green. Which is very different to the shades that we have already. It's more of like a mossy colour. Whereas the names, we've got like a list of names for the colours. It's not really much of a leaf green, so it is good to have options, and that's like where your range will come from in your painting. I think I might add just the tiniest bit more yellow, just to see if we can go anywhere else with it. There we go. And then I'm going to put that together onto the colour wheel, just in between the yellow and the blue. And this way also you can see the specific colours, rather than if I was just going to pick up one of these greens, it isn't the colour that these two colours make. It is a green, but it's a totally different shade and hue. just going to build on that a bit because I think it's quite watery. There we go. I'm going to hold this up to the camera a bit more so you can see it a bit better. It looks a lot more grey and brown in real life, on camera. I wish I could get this lighting sorted out. I've got a lamp right next to this camera. It's not really showing up very good. And we have the yellow. I'm going to put it really close that it would. Blue. Went on to purple. Red. What looks bright pink, but it isn't. I promise it's red. The orange. And that's our colour wheel with our primary colours. So these three, and our secondary colours, which are purple, orange and green. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to use some water on a clean brush to join these together, and hopefully there'll be enough colour to sort of show you what I mean by the tertiary colours. If not, I'll just dip back into the pan. So I'm going to have quite a lot of water on the brush. I'm just going to go into that blue and lead it to the purple. And this kind of makes like a bluey purple colour. I think I'll show you this at the end as well when it's dry, because it'll show up a lot more. Now I'm going to clean the brush off again, leave a little bit of water on, and follow it around. So this purple, make sure we're breaking down those dried edges. Meet in the middle. And mix those all together to make again that sort of cherry purple mix. And continue with the red, just breaking down those edges. And then mixing in the orange to meet in the middle, where we get this nice pinky orange, almost like a peachy colour. And with watercolours, they're very forgiving as well, so you could have it dry for, like this has been dry for a few minutes. Some of the colours like the yellow will be quite dry, and you can just go straight back in with the colour, with the water, and it just breaks it down again, which is like a bonus of using watercolours. So I'm going to go back to the orange. This is getting quite faded now on these lighter colours, but sometimes you might need that in your artwork, what you're creating. And although the yellow was quite dry, it is still giving me something to work with. I think what I'll do is dip back into that yellow just a little bit. And then we get that really nice light orange, almost yellow colour. And then we move over to the green and yellow. I'm going to drag that towards the yellow now and let it just meet in the middle. And then lastly, we're going to join the blue and the green together to make a kind of bluey green colour. Make sure if your paints have dried a little bit, just to add that extra bit of water, and it will break the paint down again. And because I've washed that blue out quite a lot, I'm going to go back in and just reinforce that. I'm going to grab a little bit of tissue because I can see that I've added a bit too much water there. and dry off my paintbrush and just spread the blue and blend it back to where it's supposed to go. Make it a bit more circular. And there we are, this is our colour wheel. I will just very quickly show you. It's our red, sort of turning into our purple. It is still quite wet, so it might be a little bit drippy. And then it turns into the blue, round to the green and the yellow, along to the peaches and the orange, and back to the red. So this is kind of a blended version of the colour wheel. So now that we've looked at the colour wheel and primary and secondary and a few tertiary colours, we're going to look at how we can lighten those colours into tints. Now there's two ways that we can do it, especially with watercolours. We can start off with quite a bold colour, so I'm going to use a different colour that I've not used yet. So look, I think I'm going to go with this dark green. So because it's quite bold, and I think it'll come up quite nicely on the camera. So there's two options and you'll get sort of similar results, but it all depends on what you're going to go for in your drawing or painting. So I'm going to start off, this is upside down to me. And what I'm going to do is just keep on getting rid of a bit of paint off my brush, so I'm going to add more water and just follow it all the way down, and then I'm going to brush off the brush completely, dip it in the water, give it a bit of a dry, and follow that all the way down until it disappears. So here we have the different sort of shades. So what you could do instead of this, if you wanted a very light version of this colour somewhere along here, what you would do is just add more and more water. You would sort of mix it in the pan and just add extra bits of water until you're happy, and you could have a sample piece of watercolour paper next to your painting just to test before you commit to putting it on the page. But then the really good thing, again, like I've said before, is we can just keep adding water anywhere and it will eventually lighten to most of the time to the colour that you want. So our second option is to, instead of mix the colour with just water, we're going to mix it with the white paint in the pan. So I'm going to start off with the same green, same way that we did it before, quite bold at the top. Just keep on working my way down the page until it kind of goes dry. And then I'm going to start again at the top just to get a little bit more of a pigment going on. I'm just going to keep on blending that down to the bottom, just in the same way that we did with the water. Now you'll notice I haven't blended it all the way the same as the other one because we can still see a bit. This is where we're going to add the white. I'm going to pick up quite a lot of white and start down here. I'm using the same brush that has just been in the green as well, so it might have a little bit of a greeny tinge to it. And I'm going to work my way back up here to blend. But I'm going to just wash my brush that's got a little bit of water on. I'm going to blend it all again one final time, blending all that green into the white, and it kind of gets a bit of a grey tinge as well halfway through. This is just water build up here, so it's not as sort of grey as what it seems on camera, but nevertheless there is that build up along the side. And this is sort of going into the specific colours now. If you needed a really sort of light colour with a green tinge, then it's a good way to sort of just, instead of using the water where it does disappear, you can use the white where it will still remain on the page. It'll still be a very light tint, but you'll still be able to see the edges. So it is kind of a good technique if you wanted to make something a bit more 3D, but you still needed the edge, like the white edges or the lighter edges. And we will cover this in the next couple of sessions as well. It is difficult when I'm just on a sample page and I can't really explain fully what I mean, but you will understand. I'm just working to make that look a bit neater so you can see how it all works. So there will be times when you want to use this technique, there'll be times when you want to use the one where it just fades totally off. But there you go. So you can practice this with all of the colours, any colours that you want. You could practice it with the black and white as well to create different shades that don't have any actual primary or secondary colours in. I am going to demonstrate that now actually, because I think not every painting is in colour. You might want to paint in black and white. So I am going to do an example of that, and then we'll move on to the shades as well, like the shade in different colours. And we'll also lastly do a sort of blend of two opposite colours as well to finish off. So the way I'm going to do this is start off with the white first, because with watercolours we do work up to dark. And don't forget, like I've just forgot there, to give your paper a little bit of a clear coat of water. It's going to turn it on its side so it's a little bit easier. It did have a little bit of white paint, but it's fine, it wasn't. So just where I'm going to apply all of the paint, just that thin layer of water to set us off. And normally I would tape this all down, but just for the sake of demonstration very quickly, I won't do that. So I'm going to start off with a bit of white so we can get that built up a little bit at the bottom. Put that there as well so you can see what I'm doing. I know it won't look much for now, but we're just adding it so that it's there to blend into, because it is harder to blend the white into the black. It's much easier to blend the black into the white. And what I'm going to do is just build up that pigment of the black and start around here, very dark. And then what we're going to do, like we've done before, is not add anything, just blend it down until we run out of the moisture, and that'll naturally just blend straight into the white. And you see how we already had this white here? I'm just going to totally get all of that black off the brush. I've got a tissue over here, what you can't see on the camera, I'm not just wiping it on the table. So we're still quite a dry brush. We're just going to blend that all the way down to the bottom until we have nothing at the end. I'm just going to blend that straight off the paper actually. So that is kind of a gradient of how we would go from black to white. A very, very dark shade, the darkest shade to the lightest shade. And it is just good to practice these, and then when it comes to you wanting a specific shade or a specific colour, you can easily just think back to your experiments with all the different colour theory methods, and you'll know what to do naturally. So I am getting a little bit carried away now, so I'm going to just very gently with the tissue pick some of that up and then just fix it a bit. But yeah, just have a little go, have a little experiment with it. There's no right or wrong, it's just you getting used to all of the materials. A little bit of a closer look. I hope this camera is a bit better now that I've messed around with the settings. So again, we would normally take this down. All I'm doing is folding it just so I can get it close enough to the camera to show you up close. So then it goes all the way down and fades out. So what we're going to do now is an example of a shade of red. So earlier we did the tinting, I think with the green, and now I'm going to go for red and show you how we can make that into a darker colour by adding black. So I'm still going to start off with quite a bold red at the top, because we're not trying to make it lighter, we're actually making it darker, so the lightest part will be the most pigmented, which will be this side. And I will just keep running that down, but we're not really wanting to make it into a tint, so we're not trying to make it lighter. We're just going to keep it at the really bright pigmented red that it is, all the way. It's very even. I'm going to wash all that off my brush, go straight into the black, and it's going to be one of those meet in the middle scenarios. I'm sorry, I just realised I can't see what I'm doing. So I have the black here. I'm going to work that up, so it will get lighter as it goes up, but that just gives us like areas to work with. We don't want it too dark. Just going to wash that brush off, and then what I'm going to do is get my tissue and just dry it off, because it is quite wet on the page. And then I'm just going to very carefully from both sides, so I'm going to shade it up to the red and then dry the brush off again, like wash the paint off and dry it again, and then I'm going to just keep on meeting in the middle. So for working from one end to the other until we're sort of evenly blended throughout. So what we really are looking at is this middle section where we have, so if we forget about the ends for now, because we already have these colours at hand, it's sort of the middle section where that blending takes place, where you'll find the colours, what a sort of shaded red, or a black with a little bit of a tinge of red. It's like those kind of black cherry colours. And then once you're happy with it, you just let it dry, and you do get a better representation of the colour once it's dry, because you have all these sort of shiny parts from where the paper's wet. You can't really see it as well as you would want to. So I'm going to hold this up. So we start, see how it's shiny, and I'm best off showing you it when it's fully dry. It looks quite slimy, doesn't it? And then, so it goes from the dark, the black, all the way up to the red. And that's sort of how we make the darker shades. So lastly, what we're going to look at is how we mix two different colours together. So this might come in useful if you're doing some sort of surrealist sky scene, or if you're wanting to mix a certain texture for your artwork. So it'll be different for everyone, but just if you have the basics down, then you will be able to mix any colour together and blend it really nicely. So, I'll wash my brush again. There is no paint on this brush, but it doesn't look very clean because I've been using it quite a lot today. So let's see. I think I'll go for a blue and an orange because they're quite contrasting colours. So it is good to show how you can blend them together, even though they're contrasting. Now, contrasting means that they're on the opposite ends of the colour wheel. So I'm just building up that pigment. I'm going to add a bit of it to this lid. Get that nice orange colour. What you can do is add the other colours as well, so I might want that a bit more red. So go ahead, add some red to it. And then on the opposite side, I'm going to go for the dark blue. You just got to keep, like, quite a lot of patience, and whoops, we'll fix that later. I'm going to keep adding more water and more pigment, and I want just a similar amount to the orange. This is sort of pooling together. Must be the chemicals in it, because this one lays quite flat, and this one, there's quite a lot there, and it could fill that space, but it doesn't. So I don't know why that is. I'll have to have a Google and see what must be going on. So I've got quite a lot there. I'm happy with that. So I think we'll do just like a straight gradient again, just to show how they can blend together and the colours that meet in the middle with what we might not have thought of. So I'm going to grab a little bit of tissue where I've made that mistake. And we won't really be able to see that once we've got our colour on there, hopefully. So I'm going to start with a blue, and it isn't a really striking blue like before. It's quite a pale indigo kind of colour. Just continuing that down until it disappears, or it starts to disappear. I'm actually going to go back into the pan to get just a little bit more, just so you can see what's happening. I always like to make it straight on the edges as well. I'm going to totally wash my brush and then go in with the orange on the opposite side. So for example, this would be really nice if you were doing a sky. You know how sometimes the sky's got bits of orange in it, and there's that saying, isn't there, but I can't think of where it is. I'm sure somebody will tell me in the comments. Something about red sky at night. I don't remember. Somebody can tell me. So it gets quite pale to the middle section. So what I would do is I would wait for it to dry and then go back in with the different colours. And they do dry quite quickly, it won't take. I'm just going back in to get some more blue out with this palette, just to show how you can go in and blend colours, although it is quite wet still, so they will sort of disperse out. But once it dries, it'll be that seamless effect. Sometimes I get carried away when I'm talking and painting at the same time. It takes a while for the words to come out. And then again I'm going to do that on the other side. Orange, that comes up quite bright, which is nice. It doesn't sort of get lost in there. I'm just doing random sort of blobs at the minute, and then I'm going to go back in with a tissue, I think, just to blend it a bit more. Back with the blue. I think the orange is coming up a lot more over this edge than what it is there, like than what the blue is on the orange side. I'm going to do it to blend this all in. I'm just wetting my brush. I'm just going to go over, just very carefully blending, and when it dries it will look like much better. So I've done like the different variations of it just to show what it looks like on the contrasting side as well. What I'm doing up here is actually I'm leaving those naturally formed edges because I think it does look quite nice as a sky scene, kind of like a nice sunset. And I'm just blending them all in together. There's no plan really, it's just experimenting, and then you might find that you really like this technique and you want to use it somewhere else. So we will look at these techniques a bit more when we are doing our landscaping sort of section of the project. But it is nice to just layer all of these colours and you do get a really nice effect. Just don't put too much moisture on the page because you can lose it very quickly. I'm really liking this kind of rippling effect. It could also be like a reflection onto the sea, or kind of looks almost like rust, but in a good way. Kind of upside down how I intended. And kind of get it on there. So even if the orange was white, that would look lovely as a sky. Then on the opposite side, this would be more of like a textured background rather than a sky, I think, because it doesn't look very realistic. But it's all just experimenting. Then even in the middle, we have these lovely oranges and blues coming together, and you wouldn't normally put that together as two colours, but I kind of like it. So there we are, that is two colours blended with just a little bit of experimentation on top. So just have a go, use the book that you got in the previous projects just to have an experiment with all this. If you need any more watercolour paper, just get in touch. So I hope you enjoyed that video. I know some people might have found it quite basic, but there are members who might not have done anything regarding colour theory, so it is good to have the basics and it's good to have a refresher even if you did know all that already. So we started off with our colour wheel. I'm going to show you a little bit now that it's dried. I think it's come up quite a lot bolder and it does look better in person. So here's all the variations of the colours that we mixed, and if you fancy making one of these yourself, please share it with everyone on the Artrium Facebook page. I'd really love to see what you've come up with. And then we kind of looked at our tints and the different ways of doing that. So I'm going to show you, this is the one just with the water, how it disappears all the way down, and this is the one where we've added the white and you get more of like the edges. And then we looked at our grayscale gradient, going from dark to light. You can see this has been done very quickly, so it's not as blended as what I would normally do in my work, but it's just an experiment and it's just to show you. Then we moved on to making shades. So this is our red to black. But you can do this with any of the colours. Just have a go, and I'd really love to see what you've done, and if you post them on the Facebook page, I'll give you some feedback, and I'm sure all of the other members who are taking part, I'd love to see it as well. Nice little community going in these horrible times. And then finally, we mixed two contrasting colours into different textures, just to experiment. So just have a go with everything that you have in your pack. Just try your best and see what you can come up with. So next week we're going to be focusing on portraits. So I hope everyone enjoyed this video and I hope to see you on the next one. So thank you everyone for watching and I'll see you later. Bye!